Next time they shine your light in the sky, don't go to it. The bat is dead. Buried.
Tell me. Do you bleed? You will.
Lend me your ears once again. These words will hit like a whirlwind. I've gathered my chips, now I'm cashing in. How come we can't find the passion?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Loot Bros Comic Cast. I'm your host, ResidentDarrell, and I'm back with another DC Comics New 52, the Villains Takeover review. So, just a little recap for what we're doing with this particular series is I purchased another long box full of comics, and I reached in and grabbed a handful of these holographic cover, really, really cool villain takeover one-shots for the DC Universe back in the New 52 run. So these take place around 2013. The covers are really amazing. This particular issue we're covering today is going to be the Justice League of America 7.2 Killer Frost #1. On the front cover, it's really awesome. You've got Killer Frost and a bunch of ice shards and things going around her. It has Katana kind of down in the background. It looks like maybe even Etrigan. I don't understand why, because neither of them are in this particular book, but it may be somewhere to do in the arc. It also has Hawkman in there as well. And on the back, again, a holographic version of Batman from the Batman Arkham Origins game. So, first things first, the cover is stellar. That is kind of what inspired this series. Most of the covers are really, really cool. The general concept of them is really cool, regardless if the individual cover itself is great. But quite enjoying these one shots, this little series. This one in particular is a bit of an origin story. It's got some good art, so definitely worth your time. So what I'm going to do is going to give you a little synopsis of the book, kind of give you my opinion of it, where it was kind of generally setting up the arc for this time frame. And I'm trying to keep these episodes kind of bite-sized, short and sweet. So with that being said, this is Loot Bros Comic Cast. You get this in the Loot Bros Patreon a couple days early. Obviously, if you're a patron, anything that I do over in the patreon.com/the Loot Bros podcast, you get access to in there for no additional charge, just for being part of our patronage, our patrons, our Patreon, for being a patron. So definitely appreciate all of you guys and gals out there supporting us. So with that being said, I like to give a shout out on each and every show to our Patreon producers. And so for the month of August, we have Sadik, My Name is Eving Mayo, and MZ Nitro. We definitely appreciate you guys. I would crack open a toast, but I broke into it a little bit early. So here's your slurp. So that being said, this particular issue is really good, kind of short. Again, it's a bit of an origin story. All right, so this book is written by Sterling Gates, penciled by Durlis Santa Cruz, also inked by Durlis Santa Cruz, colored by Brett Smith, letters by David Sharp, and the cover artist is Tony Daniel. So very, very good stuff right here. Like I said, I quite enjoyed it. But so it starts off with a particular character explaining what hypothermia is and how hypothermia actually works. And so this is one of the cool things when it comes to comic books. You always have someone explaining something scientific, something that's cool, what have you. And it, it's just a very interesting, nerdy way of explaining kind of like your set piece and where you kind of get the beginning of this book. And it's explaining the scientific nature behind hypothermia with this really cool page and series of panels of someone freezing to death outside of what ends up being a star research lab is really cool. One of the really standouts for the art in here is that the lady's mouth is open. She's wearing a red kind of a snow coat. This is very reminiscent of some Silent Hill stuff. Like everything about it, this random sign that says Star Labs to the right, and then this person being covered in snow very much reminds me of Silent Hill Downpour. One of the characters kind of even looks like she would fit in the Silent Hill universe. But what's really cool is just the amount of freezing in her mouth, because her mouth is open, her eyes are almost rolled back in her head, and it's just cool. Like just the whole the art of it is very, very good. It's very interesting, very much like how this one starts off. So, but essentially, you come to meet Dr. Caitlin Snow. A nice little cheeky conversation between her and one of the other researchers, basically talking about how smart she is. And how she is this almost super scientist coming in to take over this research facility, and they're working on this what do they call it? A thermodynamic ultraconductor engine, essentially a new way to create engine. And in typical comic book fashion, we're going to have some sort of accident that's going to cause the origin story of said person turning into who they become. And it's no surprise that in 3 pages, this Dr. Caitlin Snow has done all the research, has read all the notes and all the things of the scientists that came before her, and she has gone and repaired said machine and got this thermodynamic superconductor engine up and running. So what you then find out is that the other scientists that are there in this, quote, underfunded research facility with the brightest scientists. The reason why they're all there is not so they can work off the radar. It's because they're all employed by the Hive. Now, if you're familiar with the DC universe, the Hive is another industry, another conglomeration of bad guys. And the Hive has been paying for these particular scientists to make sure that this superconductor doesn't get built so that it doesn't interfere with their other energy investments. That's probably the best way to put it. So what they do is they see that Dr. Caitlin Snow has fixed the machine and got it running. So they lock her in there with the machine and they turn it on to stage an accident. So she's accidentally killed the way that the other scientist was accidentally left out in the snow to freeze to death. But what happens is Dr. Caitlin Snow, soon to be Killer Frost, takes the coolant lines, smashes it into the machine. The superconductor then mixed with the coolant line causes this giant explosion, rewriting her DNA and giving her the power to freeze things, manipulate ice, and yada yada yada. Very comic booky, origin story by the numbers, but interesting nonetheless. Like the way it's written out and the way they kind of paint her as this really awesome, young, bubbly scientist that's super smart and also, did this super cool thing. I mean, it's very, very, very in universe for the Flash. So very cool stuff. I like it. Overall, I think it's a decent book. So from there, it goes to how she's created and how she turns into Killer Frost to then, oh, dang, killing people and sucking the warmth out of their body is kind of motivating her. It's almost written in a hunger, horror, zombie sense, And then she's kind of like, wait a minute, I got to find another place. I got to feed off of people. I got to feed off their warmth. This is the only thing that makes me whole. It's the only thing that's making me complete. And then from there, she has an encounter with Firestorm. Now, Firestorm is powered by his subatomic whatever that powers him and gives him his power or whatever. And essentially, him hitting her with fire gives her the pleasure. And then it's almost this cat and mouse thing of like, she's like, I'm drawn to him. I got to figure this out. And he actually blasts her with his fire so much that she turns whole for a little while and then turns back into the frost creature that, that she has become, Killer Frost. So from there, her new obsession is to constantly battle with Firestorm to learn more about him and to essentially try to take his power or use his power to bring herself back to being normal. Now, What's really cool is at that point, the Justice League Syndicate is introduced. And if you're familiar with the Justice League Syndicate in the comics, that is essentially the bad guy Justice League from another universe. That in itself is a whole nother can of worms, but essentially the Justice League Syndicate is here on this Earth, and they're like, the Justice League is dead, we're taking over, this planet is ours. And that causes Killer Frost to have some issues because she's like, wait a minute, if Firestorm's dead, I have no shot at becoming normal. So then she starts to have a bit of a freak out. And then the book ends and kind of leads into a run of those comics. As a matter of fact, the last page, it says DC Comics unleashes Killer Frost in freezing to death. So it becomes her story arc, and she's sitting in an alleyway and just sitting there freezing everything around her while she's, kind of freaking out. But this book has some really good splash pages. The art was great overall. The writing is pretty good. Again, for a by the numbers supervillain origin story, I mean, they didn't reinvent the wheel, but a nice little one shot nonetheless. Now, what I think is great about this book is that I've got next to no experience with Killer Frost. Like, she's been a C-class, D-class sub-villain in some of the books that I've read over the years, and she's in a few of the DC animated films. So this jumping in and diving into this series, although I don't own every issue, we're going to go over the issues that I do own, and then maybe, I don't know, depending on how things are going, how the feedback, how the reception is, and then my personal enjoyment of this, maybe we'll dig into the ones digitally that I don't own physically. But that being said, it's pretty interesting. It's pretty good. And I definitely recommend it. So I think if you like good art and you like a decent book, a short little read, a nice little one shot, if you're into DC villains, if you're listening to this episode and you're like, man, I'm kind of looking to dive into something that's just a little different than maybe my norm, or maybe the most modern books aren't doing it for you, I recommend it. I think that this is a pretty good book. So that being said, it's a nice little, but you can get on DC Universe, is it Infinite now? Yeah. DC Universe Infinite. You can read these books, and you can follow along as we go through this series, or you can just listen to it and say, okay, cool. Not a huge fan of Killer Frost. I don't think she's utilized very well in runs moving forward, but to be fair, I haven't read everything where she has been introduced. So I will say, at least for me, I'm going to do a little digging, a little research. I might read a little bit more about Killer Frost and see if she has some good runs. I will say, compared to Deadshot, I think this was a bit of a better issue. But most likely, that's just because I don't know much about this particular character. Whereas Deadshot, I know Deadshot. I've read a lot of Deadshot stuff. I've seen him, and his book didn't really deviate very far from what you know about Deadshot. So that being said, definitely check it out. Check out other episodes that I'll be dropping on the Comic Cast feed. I appreciate all you guys who are checking it out. Would love some feedback. The Loot Bros Comiccast at gmail.com. You can go to our Discord. You can go to our Facebook group and just leave any kind of comments, any kind of books you want me to cover, any suggestions, what have you. Josh and I will be getting back together soon. We're working on a special project right now in the Godfoe universe. Godfoe universe is the comic book universe that he and his writer and best friend Dan Evans have created. We're going to have Dan on soon to have some conversations from the writing aspect of these books. But we'll be doing some really cool stuff in the Godfoe universe, and that's coming up. So you'll probably get a lot less of Josh and I together on the Comic Cast, a lot more of just me doing one-off episodes, especially these review issues. And then soon, in the coming months, we're going to make the announcement for our upcoming Godfoe Universe project. So that's going to be super, super exciting. I think you guys are going to really dig it. And if you have not checked out Apollyon 20XX yet, that is the ash can that gets things kind of going with the Godfoe Universe. So you definitely want to check that out. I have been privy to some Godfoe info, and it's awesome, guys. You're really going to dig it. I think you guys are really going to be happy with what Josh and crew are putting together. So that being said, this is Loot Bros Comic Cast. Leave some feedback, leave reviews, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. I will be deviating a little bit from this series and sprinkling in some of the Bloodborne comics. The Bloodborne has released a new comic run. I've got all five covers of issue 1. Super cool stuff. So I haven't read it yet. I'm going to read it probably today, and then that'll be dropping in the feed as well. So I will do my best to interrupt this particular run as little as possible, but I picked up some really cool stuff. So on top of Bloodborne, I've got the new Deceased stuff. I've been kind of picking up some of the Big Trouble in Little China comic books from Boom Studios, Old Man Jack, things of that nature. So I might sprinkle a little bit of that in here and there. But I am going to at least finish this run before we dive into anything else really big. That is unless you guys write in, comment in, say, hey, we want X, Y, or Z. So if you go to the show description, there are links to the link tree. Go check out our merch store. Right, StoreFrontier, the Loot Bros podcast. We've got Comic Cast shirts. We've got Loot Bros podcast shirts. We have the greatest shirt ever in the Loot Bros poop sock. So we're going to be adding more and more stuff to that. Might even do some Loot Bros Comic Cast hosts in the Godfo universe art style. I don't know. Maybe that's happening. Maybe it's not. Just want to throw a little bit of those things out there. So definitely go check out the merch. All the merch is priced as low as it will allow me to put it on the store. So the shirts sell for $15 a piece on there plus shipping. That is the lowest it will allow me to mark it down on a print to order shop. Why exactly am I doing that? Do I make any money? No, I make a few pennies per shirt, and that is no exaggeration. And that's only because it wouldn't let me go any lower. I make a little bit per shirt, a few pennies, and I wanted them priced down so that you guys, the listeners of the show, would have access to cheap and easily attainable merchandise. I'm not looking to make a bunch of money. I just want you guys to have cool stuff. So if you get a Comic Cast shirt, take a picture, put it in the group, send it over. Would love to see you guys representing, and we will be adding new designs soon. Thank you so much. This is the Loot Bros Comic Cast, and we're out.
Countdown on the clock again. Feel like I'm playing in a game that I can never win. Time is running out, I know I gotta make a choice. So many whispers in my ear that I can't hear my voice. Tell me, will it end the situation that I'm in? Or am I bound to sit alone, drowning in my sin? Get right or get left, what will it be? Time is running out, the blood is flowing down the streets. People need to know we're living in a war zone. Hit the streets with the truth, tell them that it's on. Get right or get left, what will it be? Time is running out, the blood is flowing down the streets. People need to know we're living in a war zone. Hit the streets with the truth, tell them that it's on. So many people that I talk to know the truth. Do what they want to do and really never follow through. Follow you, yeah, see nothing but false idols. Pedestals and tear them down, I don't need a title. Just give me grace, free love, and nothing but truth. Toss out the lies, all the wolves hiding in disguise. Lost time is something we can never get back. Pay no attention to opinions, only want the facts. Get right or get left, what will it be? Time is running out, the blood is flowing down the streets. People need to know we're living in a war zone. Hit the streets with the truth, tell them that it's on. Get right or get left, what will it be? Time is running out, the blood is flowing down the streets. People need to know we're living in a war zone. Hit the streets with the truth, tell them that it's on. We are living in a broken world. Yeah. is running out, the blood is flowing down the streets. People need to know we're living in a war zone. Hit the streets with the truth, tell them that it's on. Get right or get left, what will it be? Time is running out, the blood is flowing down the streets. People need to know we're living in a war zone. Hit the streets